Can we add recreational areas to that thing?
Do you got a copy
With
of?
dams and stuff?
And people are interested.
It's already put there.
Wait, what's a recreational area?
So like, as far as in the States, or like where you vote and stuff, like where you.
And like you can fish.
Okay.
Fish farm.
Yeah, they're fun.
Oh, wait, but like we need them for.
Well, yeah, you still
You
use
can-
them.
Okay,
swim in
that.
Well, yeah, you can.
It just gets processed
It's
after.
processed. You're gonna have to process it.
Alright, if you need to modify, if you feel that you need to modify it, alright, so we have about an hour left, in this session, and we're gonna try and do this as efficiently as possible. But if you have an amendment that you would like to make to any of these clauses, just say yes with an amendment, and then we'll know that and, get to it later. So with an amendment, then
Yes.
okay. Right?
Healthcare?
Healthcare?
With an amendment about research.
Water. Or the first one? Water, yes.
Yes, with the amendment that the dams are like small hydropower within the like linking channels, rather than the main rivers.
Okay. Point two.
Wait, can healthcare repeat the?
Research on health.
Thank you.
And you can also say no, that's allowed too, so. Point two is reasoning for an investment in the health market, agriculture. Yeah. Industry,
Yeah.
Yes.
healthcare,
Yes.
water, energy.
Yes. Small hydropower is a diverse.
So, the next point?
That's in return for urbanization.
Sorry?
Oh, no, we were just talking.
Okay, so the next point, this is the agreement for a 5% donation to critical infrastructure and research for standardization processes in just industry. 5% donation? Who's donating?
It was an agreement between the healthcare sector and the industry sector for any partnerships between the government, like if you donate 5% to this critical infrastructure, you would get first bid at bidding on government projects.
Okay,
So that's what it is.
We didn't say that.
agriculture, will you accept this?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Oh, wait.
That, so we made that agreement, in return for, increased like government funding for urbanization.
All right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what does that mean?
Well, like
Is it yes with an amendment?
like slums.
Yeah, redeveloping slums and.
So increase funding for
Okay.
redevelopment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we'll-
So
Yeah.
we're going to oppose the redevelopment of slums as an amendment to this.
We're opposed to organizations. Okay, so that would be yes with an amendment, and then we'll write that down.
We'll do that.
Okay. Healthcare?
Yes.
Okay, I guess. Water?
Not that one.
The other one had.
Number
Oh,
three.
sorry, guys, thank you.
Also, we're not agriculture.
Energy?
Hey, Pat, we're industry.
Also.
It's been a long day.
Energy? Your answer?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So rural electrification to support health, education, and telemedicine, agriculture. Sorry. Do you want us to zoom in? No.
We got this one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, oh yeah, yes.
Okay, yeah. Industry? Number 4.
Yeah, sure.
Why not?
All right. We also, oh wait, yeah, we also want it for like rural irrigation. Electrification also for irrigation.
We're gonna rule that null just because it's not a part of the electrification clause, but hopefully.
Wait, what? We want rural
Irrigation?
Yeah, rural electrification, which will like help
I think she means like increased power for irrigation.
for irrigation. So, okay, so to direct the electrification towards health, education, telemedicine, and irrigation?
We
So-
we also were hoping that was like involved in our amendment to the first.
Okay.
If that policy. Like our small hydropowers that would be deferred into rural areas.
Interesting.
So the rural electrification like happens
because of those
Those
small
dams
dams
and
and those
infiltration.
divergent
Okay.
channels.
So that's as a result, all right. So we'll continue building consensus on it. Healthcare?
Yes.
Water?
Yes.
Energy?
Oh, we're not, I meant energy says yes.
Just to clarify, we're talking about point number 4, and we're asking what amendments or amendments would make to that?
Whether or not you agree to rural electrification to support health education, telemedicine, or irrigation, and irrigation. So you say yes, no, or yes with an amendment.
Maybe yes with like the condition that we pursue more efficient irrigation techniques.
Okay.
Is everybody okay with that?
Okay. Energy, you said yes. Right. All right, nuclear regulations. It's what we discussed earlier. What you said about the 2-year wait and allowing 1 year to regulate already existing nuclear energy power plants. So, agriculture? Yes. Okay. Industry?
Yes.
Healthcare?
Yes.
Water?
So we want to make sure that there's research put towards for the water that is used, being efficient with it and making sure it's treated.
Okay, so
Treated as
Treated.
The water that leaves the facility is treated.
okay. So the amendment of efficient water usage and water treatment.
Yeah, I don't think.
But you still put it out into the environment. I think
Well,
we
it comes
just-
out as waste.
Yeah,
Like you don't
it's-
just, you don't put water in and then you get water out.
It's
It
still
comes
up to purified waste.
Oh, you mean it's used as a.
out. Like I don't think you can use it for water.
You like
Yeah,
that,
it
you throw that in the ground.
becomes radioactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's radioactive.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay, then
okay.
also from the amendment,
Yeah.
so we're going to leave all the way.
Oh.
But as long as the waste is taken care of, that's the point.
Yeah.
Do you think that we should add that in this?
As long as it's taken care of.
Okay, but
We're gonna
we want to make sure
Healthcare, yeah.
we want to make sure the new regulations are strict on the waste disposal. That's, like,
Okay.
they're not just regulations in general, they want to make sure they're strict on waste disposal, so it's not health damaging.
Which I think was what water's point was as well.
Yes.
Energy.
Well, first of all, we'd like to specify that it's thorium-based reactors.
Okay.
But also in regards to like the Greenpeace activists, we'd like to add an amendment regarding the like destigmatization, I don't know if that's a word, of nuclear energy, and like adding a campaign that would make the public know that it's gonna be a more transparent, that the system's gonna be more transparent than it has been in the past, with more regulations as we've discussed with
Okay.
healthcare, and that they'll in turn be safer than people feel like they have been in the past.
And, yep, Rose?
And healthcare has agreed to sort of publicize how the health effects are not as bad as people think, and to also really help in reducing stigma.
Yeah, the PR campaign you're referring to there. Okay. We want to do that. And so the thorium?
Thorium.
Thorium. Is everyone in agreement that it would be thorium nuclear reactors?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know for it, but yeah.
So if we want to add thorium.
Yeah, you can probably delete number 10, yeah, just understand it's thorium-based nuclear.
Okay, yep. Okay, yep.
Just like, not in this one, but more like no, 12, obviously, the top storage, irrigation infrastructure, and road.
Okay, let's add that when we get to it.
Yeah, we'll get to that one.
Yeah.
We're just gonna stick to the ordinance just so.
And that's the first one.
Okay, keep thinking, guys.
Standard.
Okay, standardization of care, agriculture. Awesome. Industry.
Standardization of care.
Yeah.
So this means educating doctors,
Oh, yeah.
standardizing. Okay. Healthcare, water, 10 out of 10. Energy,
Yes.
okay. So tax breaks for hiring of skilled labor, agriculture, thoughts? Yes. Industry?
Yes.
Healthcare? Alright, okay.
We have like a, we
haven't talked about it.
we just talk, or somebody just like bring, like, say
Okay,
one thing. What's that?
This industry doing maybe talk about it a little bit?
Yeah.
Jake, do you want to just talk to it?
What was that?
About tax rates for hiring.
Okay, guys, listen up. Industry is going to explain what this point means.
Oh, well, I know we had mentioned this in regards to the dams, that we need skilled employees to design, like architects and engineers. But primarily when we see industry coming into India, we want that to be skilled industry because skilled employees tend to create a more developed nation. And so we want the government to incentivize companies that are hiring skilled employees.
Yeah.
As opposed to like.
As opposed to like manufacturing and
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Wait, can I ask a question?
sure.
Yeah. Would there be any sort of training for, like, so with the companies that come in, would they be bringing in their own labor or would they be hiring from the Indian workforce?
They would be
Yes,
hiring from
the point is, so like we're at the intersection where we need companies to invest in India as we try and ease people away from the heavily like subsistence agricultural society. And so like to match with the fact that it's not the cheapest workforce in the world, but also it does have like skilled labor, we want those types of companies to come. So we're incentivizing them to take a little bit of a hit on wage prices and in the form of tax cuts.
Okay, but so what about job creation for like the vast majority of the nation, which would be unskilled laborers?
So, I mean, in the short term, just having more industry in general, like breeds other industries that you can also like, just if you have bigger city centers or new cities where industry is emerging that's with skilled laborers, like the people who live there still need like the services of people who perform unskilled labor. That's just, so that's kind of our idea, is it kind of builds on itself.
Okay.
Okay, so I sort of have a reservation about it just because the public health sector is already so underfunded, and I'm not sure how much of government funds or taxes does go to the public health sector, but I'm wondering if you're going to compensate for a lack thereof of money. I don't know if that makes sense, that you're taking away taxes for the health system.
So I think that we can start with that it's only tax cuts, not subsidies. So any tax money that's coming in would just be extra more than healthcare already receives. But so, and then on top of that, there will be new money, and they're not getting they're not going to be paying zero taxes. They'll be paying some, so it'll definitely go to healthcare.
Would you be doing any sort of training for the unskilled workforce to become skilled labor to work?
I feel like that's just like, put in something, not even the companies, but that's just like traditional education.
Yeah, with our 5% donations that we agreed to, we would hope that some of that would go towards like technical schools or stuff like that for people who don't go to university, but they do learn skills.
Well, like, I don't know, because the industry's not the hero here, because you are also greatly responsible for the water pollution and the air pollution that we have here.
We're also responsible for the economy too, so.
Yeah,
We
so
can't
like,
just, you can't
not
have that
paying
energy.
taxes and not.
I don't
No, it's
understand.
it's not paying taxes.
Was there a question?
But there's no question, it's just that we're the bad guys. But we have to create jobs, and we're trying to do so using like the most efficient method we have, which is nuclear power. We're trying to give back to all different sectors. I don't really know what you want us to do other than not create jobs.
You guys, we don't have to come to a consensus on every single point. Some of them you're not able to. We can continue the discussion, but just to like.
More of a non-aggressive way. I don't understand why the tax rates relates to industry creating pollution.
Well, we think this is going to transform India into a more developed nation, as opposed to like what we've seen in China is they're hiring primarily unskilled workers at a ridiculously low wage, whereas companies tend to come to India when they're looking for cheaper skilled labor than in developed nations. And so we want to continue that such that we're an industry of more skilled laborers than people in manufacturing plants, etc.
So,
it seems like what you're trying to say is that you want to bring over the skilled laborers who have the knowledge to build, you know, the things that you want to build, including ice and dams. But I think the question is, will you still be able to complement that with India's skilled laborers, or by training India's skilled laborers to complement, or do you mostly, you know, do you have an idea, are you gonna bring in?
No, we're
We never talked
saying
about,
we're going to bring.
we're not
in
transporting like
employees.
scientists from other countries over to India.
We're just bringing the companies, and they'll get hired in.
They'll get tax credits for hiring Indian skilled
Yeah,
workers.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
maybe that should be specified
Yeah,
in there.
specify that they're from India.
It's specified.
Well, but it just says skilled labor, it doesn't say.
Yeah, skilled Indian labor.
I just have one thing, I mean, I think that the concern is healthcare, there are real concerns, and that's why I just think that maybe we should, in this, just like try and do away with ambiguity, so maybe in the specific, in the donation section, or,
It's up.
But also doing this, you would have more money into the economy to be able to allocate to sectors such as healthcare, not necessarily just using tax money.
but, like, what do you mean? What
Because this is creating more confidence in companies and bringing foreign investors, which in turn brings more money to the Indian economy.
Healthcare would like to make an amendment that if they're getting this tax break, they have, this is their government sort of connection, and they have to put that 5% donation into critical infrastructure and redevelopment.
So they're directly connected.
So they're directly connected, like even though this isn't maybe a partnership with the government, this is an agreement with the government that they get the tax break. So by getting the tax break, they have to agree to this 5% donation.
So what you're basically saying is you want every company coming to India to get that, to give that 5%.
That's what we ultimately.
I mean,
if you're
that-
gonna
that
take, if you're gonna give them a tax break, then
That would
yes.
essentially eliminate the tax break we're going to give.
No, but well, if you don't give them a tax break, they don't have 5%. They can
Okay,
just
so
come on.
we'll add the amendment and then vote on that later.
One of getting people.
Okay, so
Yeah, that's pretty.
The point is to move.
New health.
Yeah.
We'll move on, let's move on.
okay, we're gonna move on to the next point.
All right, next point, number 8. Transition
We
to
don't-
commercialization.
Don't we have to vote?
We're gonna go back to that at the end. We're gonna go through the rest of them, and then at the end, we'll come back to the contentious one. If there are other contentious points, we'll, if that makes sense to you guys?
Yeah.
So just to get through the other ones, then at the very end, we will re-vote on that one. Okay? We're gonna, that one, since that one's still contentious, but we do wanna get through the other points. So, yeah, exactly. You just think it over while we're going through the other ones, we're gonna come back to it.
Pass notes if you need to also.
So agriculture,
Transition to commercialization.
Yeah, also, it's kind of like from individualism, we don't have collectivism, that was
Yeah.
our, so.
You,
That makes sense.
it might be better to word as like from collectives. As silly as that is.
okay.
From collectives.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Healthcare,
Yes.
water.
Okay, so, we want to ensure that as transition occurs, we're still conscious of the usage of groundwater and switching away, at the same time investing in the more
Look at
efficient,
me like that.
investing in more efficient, techniques of irrigation, as well as investing in, alternate sources.
So to pursue more efficient irrigation techniques?
Yes.
Okay, that's already
Well,
like.
yeah, a big thing behind commercialization is being super efficient, because companies have more money to provide resources and
Okay.
develop modern technology.
So then, I mentioned 2 things there. One was the efficiency, the other was switching away from groundwater. So can you put the second point up?
To what?
To what?
We wanna, like, have the,
Water, rainwater.
What did you?
we want there to be government regulations on the usage of groundwater by farmers as they move to this more efficient system.
Okay, so water is all I guess with that message.
Transitioning away from groundwater. Groundwater
But
is
to what though?
because you can transition.
Okay, so do you mean transition 100% from groundwater or transition a certain percentage?
I mean, obviously not an immediate cutoff.
So like
That's,
towards 100%?
I think you have to use groundwater.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have
yeah.
groundwater for farm.
We're trying to like get rid
That
of
does
these
help
how
farm.
far keep rain.
We're not saying like, we're not saying 100% stop using groundwater, we're saying limit the usage of groundwater. I don't have a specific number on like cubic meters of issue.
No, but I
But-
think, yeah, I think they're just looking for an alternative.
okay, but the thing is, alright, so regardless, you can say to what, but the problem is the groundwater levels are being depleted. So if you continue using them, they will run out. That is the actual problem. And then you'll reach the point where you're saying, oh wait, where's our groundwater? And then all the crops are like fully dependent on the monsoon and you have no irrigation. So what we're saying is be sure to invest in transitioning to cisterns, holding that water. Perhaps if we have a system of canals that will help irrigate. That will, you know, that will, we'll have to complement it in some way, but we have to transition.
Yeah, but transitioning has
Presumably though, like, were there to be a drought, I'm assuming you would lift these regulations so people didn't
Were
starve.
there a drought? Yes, you want to rely on the groundwater
Yeah.
because that's pretty much what you have there.
Okay,
But
so
you
you
can't
gotta ensure all the crops are grown.
Oh, yeah.
Alright, great. Alright, that's.
I'm not saying we're saying you have to transition off of that primary source and the groundwater is not.
Wait, I still have a question though, because you're not gonna water crops, you're not gonna like water crops just from rainwater, because rainwater goes into the groundwater sources, so like,
Could you just change it from?
it does, it leaks, like,
Yeah, but the problem is it leaks very
I like
slowly.
limit groundwater instead of transition to ground. Does that makes it sound like the goal is to like be done with.
Okay, yeah, can you change it from transitioning, because that makes it sound like eventually you're not gonna use it at all, which isn't feasible, to just regulating the use of it?
Or like lessening dependency,
or just being
like
efficient with
lessen
water.
dependency on groundwater.
Putting less
How
of a
about
strain on
fund
groundwater.
water efficiency?
Yeah, we already agreed to that, like.
That was in the top part, right? So being efficient is one part of it.
Because transitioning, like,
Okay, alright, okay, so water, are you willing to accept that your amendment is to lessen dependency on groundwater regulation, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So we're gonna move on to point 9.
oh wait, we didn't get ours yet.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Energy.
We just wanna stress that like, with the energy that's involved in like the infrastructure involved in commercialization, like transportation, and irrigation, it's clean energy such as solar, wind, and hydropower.
But like when? Like eventually or like, cause like, do we have the energy infrastructure to do that right now?
Like a main focus on all, like when new, like new energy.
Is that another transitioning? Like,
Yeah,
okay,
as new energy
Yeah,
sources are needed for, yeah.
Because like
that you're
commercialization is
developing-
not gonna just happen right away either.
Yeah.
That along with the transition to commercialization, you're developing renewable energy sources to carry that process through.
Okay. Is that suitable for everybody?
So for limiting and lessening the dependency on groundwater, the threshold is until the groundwater levels are either stable or increasing back to.
Groundwater levels increase all the time, like, when rain gets done, it's not like, it's just.
They're not increasing now. The point is, you know that you've hit the level of efficiency / non-dependence when they are stable or increasing.
Okay, we're gonna revisit that point. Okay,
What are you saying that, can I just, yeah, sure.
You know what water is.
Water, what are you saying that you would only agree to that point with that stipulation that you just added?
That should definitely be.
Okay.
Yeah, all we want is just to lessen the dependency on groundwater because the groundwater is being depleted heavily, so we need to have some sort of groundwater, we need to have some sort of supply of groundwater in
Okay.
event of drought.
So, is what we have for number 8 acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay, number 9.
agriculture says yes for 9?
Yes.
Industry?
Yes.
Industry. Healthcare?
Yes, with an amendment that there's long-term study on health effects.
Yeah, we're all cool.
I would rather.
All right. Water?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we're good, we're good.
Okay, and energy?
For number 9,
For number 9.
yeah.
Okay. All right, 10, storage for waste in the energy sector.
I think that wasn't how we.
Would you
I don't know
like,
if
okay,
that
so,
means really, our original goal was like research and development
storage of
funding
energy.
for storage of renewable energy in the grid, and integration of renewables into the grid. And then also, like a lot, like in that research and development funding, storage for safe nuclear energy waste, and then also, sorry, this is, also international, international research and development relationships to find new ways, to harness energy to mitigate natural disasters. This is a different, I think it just kind of got
A little reworded, okay.
you can make that into multiple.
Okay, alright.
We can make that into multiple points. Okay, so you're saying research and development.
It's in
Storage.
Integration of, storage for,
Nuclear waste.
okay, the renewable energy storage to the grid.
research on like renewable energy storage in general.
Okay.
And then finally, international cooperation.
Natural disaster mitigation through the harnessing of power.
Yeah, through storing energy from. Storing renewable energy.
More efficient
how do
ways to
you-
store
renewable
renewables.
energy, how do you want to phrase international?
That's like another.
That's a new one.
Okay. Just gonna paraphrase this, and then for
International cooperation for research and development in terms of harnessing power from natural disasters to mitigate them.
But you guys really didn't, for harnessing natural disasters, they're saying, so you don't have ideas right now? you
Like
want-
that one idea we discussed.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
the
Okay, what does everybody think about that?
Okay, so we realized that this isn't something we thoroughly discussed earlier.
Direct IIT Bombay wants to know if this is R&D or R&D integrated with education as well.
Integration with education as well.
With education as well? Alright, would you guys like to vote on each point or
All's one.
all one? Sounds good, okay, go big or go home. Ken, these are for yes? Okay, industry? Industry?
Industry.
Oh, yeah.
Cracker? Yes. Water?
Yeah.
And energy?
Yeah.
I don't know why you're surprised.
True, I'm like,
Money is not on it.
Okay, so we'll move on to our last point, dams to prevent flooding, and we're going to start with you, agriculture. You vote yes or no?
How is it different from the very first one?
It's for not.
I just wanted to see what the first one was.
Oh,
You can just like add it in there.
Yeah.
All those are that one. It's like they inevitably do that.
We were going to add number 11. We add number 11. Okay, so listen up, guys. Agriculture wants to propose number 11. So you guys have the floor.
So I think we talked individually to a lot of groups, in terms of infrastructure. crops are spoiling before they get to consumers, and it's a huge issue. So we want to have more infrastructure for crop storage. Yeah, so that's it.
So to have simple solutions from anything like recycled bins to like big buildings built. So that's general, just like some. Okay, that's rural road, sorry?
So rural roads and crop storage.
Oh, no, not to that, I think just on its own.
Amy, does that like require like refrigeration or?
No, it just requires like, no, I think this is like a building that,
Okay, it's like
when it rains and
Okay,
it's,
okay.
yeah, it's like protect like animals get into it.
Do you think that'll come with commercialization? Because big companies tend to like have that. Like unrelated.
It will come.
They make it as efficient as possible. They probably wouldn't.
I know, it's unrelated to that.
Like I
Maybe
like
like
add
add
it to
like
collect
add
everyone.
And this would be totally
I don't know.
Yeah, it's good.
So
Yeah.
No,
we
it's
should add that in to
Crop storage? I'm saying that was like our main thing from the beginning and it's just gonna be on the list. So whether or not people.
There's already a agreement about it, so like.
I guess, true.
No, it's important to have on.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Alright,
All right, so I think here's some instructions coming in from the Prime Minister's office. First of all, it's good that there seems to be overall agreement. Second, the Prime Minister's office is incredibly pleased that almost all recommendations seem to be aligned with the Modi government recommendations and how things are going. So as of now, here are the three final things that the Prime Minister's office wants from this group. Number one, relative to other allocations of India's total GDP so far. So thinking about, for example, allocations to sectors like education, defense, etc. What should be, according to this distinguished panel, what should be the percentage allocation, rough numbers are fine, of India's GDP to all of the recommendations here for the period 2016 to 2020, which is a 5-year plan, India 2020.
So each sector gets a
Relative to all the other allocations that India already makes to sectors like education, what percent of GDP should be allocated here total? Now this allocation will not include anything which is already planned for. So if India already allocates something to healthcare, then this allocation is in addition to that. Okay? So roughly speaking, how much total GDP would you allocate here? For all the recommendations here, which are not covered already by something that's allocated already to some sector. Number one. So it's a percentage, it's basically a 5-year plan percentage, 2016 to 2020.
Should they
Let's
add
say
it to
you
100? Are they supposed to add it to 100? But I don't know which ones are already.
It's
There's one number.
No, so what you have to roughly estimate, and this is as the overall panels, you can do some quick research right now. What the idea is, what you have to estimate is an overall amount that you need just for this. Let's say you say it's 1% of GDP, just as an estimate. It could be 0.5%, it could be 3%. What should that percentage of GDP be that should be allocated here? Or it could be 1 to 2%. Right? You're making recommendations. What should be the percent of GDP that should be allocated here? And use other allocations, let's say the education sector, healthcare, whatever sectors as baseline. Defense sector, what is allocated by India? As baselines. And then recommend how much should be allocated here, keeping in view the Modi government's priorities, which you seem to be well aware of based on this discussion. So how much you think should be allocated? Now if some of these areas are already being thought of, there was this discussion, that some of these will already be done. Potentially then money has been allocated through some other ways. That is not part of this. So that you can say already X amount has been allocated. We are asking for an additional 2.5% or 3% of GDP. So that percentage number is what I want. That is an overall percentage that is. These are tasks for this entire panel, so you can discuss, and there is this one number or a range that we want. Right? Don't give a range like that Stephen Colbert thing, 0 to 100%. Number 2, the Modi government would want an estimate of your allocations then. Once you have said that 10% of the GDP is what you would like the government of India to allocate, then take these 11 areas, and you could say, well, 10B, I'm just giving an example, 10B is already covered through some other schemes that the government of India has. So you don't need to allocate anything from this budget. But roughly speaking, how would you allocate your budget to all these 11 areas? Okay? Number 3, and this is for the entire panel, so you can discuss, you can take some little bit time off to do some quick research, and then as entire panel there is something that we just need this panel to say with one word, that here is what we should have. And again, if there are disagreements, just feel free to write those down. Number 3 is we need 2 to 3 minute press releases from any one person selected by this panel who will represent the views of this panel, not his or her personal views only, the views of this panel, which will help the Modi government to answer questions on GMO, dams, nuclear, people like Vandana Shiva for GMO, people like Meera Bhatkar for dams, people like Greenpeace for nuclear, because these are real challenges to be able to address those. So the Modi government will like help from this panel. 3 things that we want right now, right? That the Modi government wants right now. Is that clear what we want? Yes. And that, once we have that, that should conclude this work. Make sense? The Modi government rests.
Do you guys feel it's more productive to come up with these numbers in your small groups, or would you like to do it as collective?
If we try small groups and then.
We did like
I feel like a big group.
5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Small
All
groups.
right, 5 minutes in small groups. We'll come back in 5 minutes. All right.
And the broad climate risk mitigation. Just to use something. And you are saying that next 5 years, India should spend 1% of its GDP on climate risk mitigation as defined here. And then you say, oh, by the way, the total amount that India is spending on climate risk mitigation is not just 1% of its GDP, but 5%, because some of these things are already being done through some other schemes. Right? But you are proposing an additional 1% for some of this. You see what I'm saying? Let me give you one more example. Let's say the interlinking project and dams. Okay? Let's say dams as an independent, small dams versus big interlinking projects. Let us say that the big interlinking project was already part of Government of India's plan, and that budget was to come from somewhere else. Let's say, just hypothetically, that constitutes 4% of India's GDP. I mean, that's a huge number, it's not only 4%. But just as an example, let's say that constitutes 4% of India's GDP. Now you are suggesting small dams, and you are saying 1% of India's GDP should be spent on that. So what you are suggesting for climate resilience specifically is just 1%. But the total amount that India is really spending is 5%. That 4% is already being spent from somewhere else. That's not additional budget that you are asking. Does that make sense? So I am asking for that 1% number. Now once you have that 1% number, then you are allocating that number across all these 11 projects. Does that make sense? 1% is for climate resilience. Climate resilience now includes A, B, C, 3 priorities, out of which 1 is already being paid for somewhere else. The other 2 is where you're allocating your specific budget that you're asking for. How do you allocate them? 50% on one, 50% on the other, 20% on one, 80% on the other? No?
Alright, so we'll start in 5 minutes, and then you can answer any questions.
Of course you can.
We're sending out the list that we sent out. Do you have a question?
You just cannot pay attention, go there, sit down, sleep, whatever you want to do. But if you are here, pay attention, do not distract. So, over here, this panel and I'm only interested in the views of this panel. We go through this list. Which of these things do you think are already covered through some other finance? Government of India is already planning to do this. That's not budget you need to ask for. That's not new. It's not covered, okay. Healthcare, research on health, is that covered? No. Energy, small hydropower and divergent channels, so these amendments are not covered. Can you please make them blue? So we only ask for money for this area.
left by the
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. All right, all of them, A is A as well. Okay, these are the only things you need to ask money for. All right. Number two, read number 2. Is this covered somewhere else? Is it, yeah, yes.
If it doesn't necessarily require money in the sense that it's a policy change, would we say that it's covered?
Yeah, so policy change.
Yeah, so if you're, like, if you're not necessarily giving them financial incentives, but if you're relaxing restrictions on foreign investment, with that, then you could say it's covered?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're already doing that. Okay, so this is covered. I mean, you don't have to ask for new money for this. Right? Okay, covered. Just make it bold. Number 2, make it bold. Any amendments there are no amendments here. Anything specific that you think is not covered here? Is in number 2, is everything covered or are there some amendments? Anything that you'd like to add? No. Okay. Number 3, is this covered? Anywhere? No. So I would say make entire number 3 blue. Thank you. All right.
But that, is that development?
Question from where?
Donation itself doesn't cost you money.
Yeah, my question is, does it need to be covered, because isn't it just corporations giving a donation?
That's just a policy.
It's a policy thing.
Okay.
It's not a government.
So that's not blue, that's green.
And
That's policy.
can you specify health standardization processes? I'm pretty sure that was ours. Yeah, for healthcare specifically. It's not just critical infrastructure and research for standardization processes. It's for standardization processes for healthcare system.
Yeah.
What was the question? To whom?
It's
It
just
was
putting in a word.
It was just because it's pretty ambiguous when you say.
Okay, so what do you want it to say?
So that 5% donation was agreed upon with regards to the healthcare
Just
system.
add that.
All of
just
it goes to healthcare?
No, it's standardization in healthcare processes.
But only healthcare benefits
No, it's critical infrastructure for a lot of different things, but the standardization process, it's like standardization of care.
Oh.
But
So you
that's
guys
all.
can still get road, but you just have healthcare.
Yeah, that's, you get the
Of
critical
healthcare
infrastructure, we just want the
process.
standardization of care.
Is that it?
Yes.
Yes, everybody agrees? Okay. That's policy, no budget needed. All right. Number 4. Is this covered? Is this new? Have you seen this before? New. So this is blue. We need money for this.
Pay as well.
Yes, everything. Right?
Yes.
Blue. All right. Regulations only? Number 5. Anything that needs money?
Annual, yeah, everything.
Well, the regulations don't need money.
But it's an international trip.
Yeah.
What is the consensus of this panel? Yes?
The PR campaign needs money.
The inspection part of it has already been agreed between the United States and India with the
Okay.
United States-India Civil Nuclear Agreement in
Yes.
2008.
Okay, so what needs money?
Everything else
Everything
except
else.
the checking of reactors.
Okay, why don't you make A and B everything blue? Does that sort of convey the idea?
I think A would
Yes.
need to be blue, because that's just.
Oh yes, that's just annual
Yeah.
check. Okay, so check is not needed.
Yeah, so it'd be like
Yes?
I.
That would be just
Oh,
not.
1, 2, 3. Okay, yes, just make these blue. All right. Standardization of care. What is this again? That was healthcare process. Is this
On 5A, make it policy.
what? 5A. Yes, that's policy. You're right. So A is green.
And like 5 in general.
Okay, 5 in general is green too.
Wouldn't it cost money to create more nuclear power plants?
Where is that?
They're private.
No, they're free.
That's just
My
regulation.
bad. Sorry.
Okay, green.
I forgot they were free.
All right. Standardization of care. Does this mean healthcare?
Yes.
So please say that, healthcare, standardization of healthcare. And would this need money? Is this just regulation? Is this both?
I think there would be it would need a little bit of money to create
Money.
what the standardization would be.
All right, so put it as blue. Tax breaks. All right. So is this what? Does this need money? No money? All right. So this is just what, policy? Green?
Do the whole thing is.
The whole thing.
Does it need the amendment in the 5% donation?
Yeah, that's just being.
That 5% donation comes, yes. Okay, transition to commercialization from collectives. Does this need money? Who is going to transition and why?
I don't think it needs money because we said it needed capital to
From
get
who?
the collective started. Yeah.
From government
So,
Like in
yes.
or from industry? From government?
government.
All right, so then make it blue. And this is not already covered anywhere, right? Okay. Okay, GMOs. Blue, needs money?
Yeah, the research.
Does this need money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. R&D?
Yes.
Everything needs money. All right. Anything else? Go down, is that it?
There's
This one?
Yes.
Not planned anywhere else? Is this being planned? Okay, so this is bold. It's already there somewhere. Bold. All right. Now let's do the following. So you have the blues. You have the blues, right? So if you just copy everything, make a separate, paste it just on the next page, and just keep the blues. While you do that, give me numbers, guys, whoever has them. India's governmental spending on these three sectors: education, defense, healthcare.
Healthcare, 1% on healthcare.
1% on healthcare. Defense?
It was 2.4%.
I'm sorry?
2.4%.
Defense.
Yeah.
Education?
3.8% on education.
3.8 on education, only 2.4 on defense. Can you check your numbers?
So wait, so it was it 2.4% of the GDP?
Yeah, so everything I'm assuming is percent of GDP here, right?
Exactly.
So 3.8% education is more than defense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to say that it's true.
Yes.
World Bank. World Bank.
Yeah, I got my.
What?
Percent of GDP.
World Bank, World Bank.
Data? India's defense spending is just 2.4% of GDP.
Well, this is education spending, 3.8.
3.8 defense spending. Can you double check 3.8 looks?
Oh, wait, no, it's not enough.
What? What's the number?
Education is
3.8 and healthcare is 1. Defense, please check defense. India's spending on defense, percent of GDP. Defense spending, percent of GDP. You'll find that by country. I think you will find that in the but I don't know if you find it in the CIA fact book. But you should be able to find that.
Yeah, it's saying 2.4, the military expenditure percentage of GDP is 2.4.
2.4. Okay. So if that is true, let's go with that. That is what this panel thinks. And we can change these if we think differently later. 1% on healthcare, 2.4% on defense, 3.8% on education. What do you think is likely to ask for climate resilience only for those portions which have not already been covered? How much? So twice that of healthcare spending?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's related. I mean, it will have effects on.
No, I'm just asking. Twice that of healthcare spending?
No, that's way too high.
Okay, then how much? So exactly the same as healthcare spending.
1.5.
More than 1.5 times healthcare spending.
0.1%.
By 1%.
0.1%.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Because we don't have that much stuff that requires money, and like health in general is like a lot of things, so we don't want to spend the same amount of money as that.
How much? Just 0.1% of GDP.
Like, that's on top of what's already there.
On top of what's already there.
Yeah.
All right, 0.1% of GDP. What is India's GDP?
If I had the internet.
Yeah.
What is India's GDP?
Internet just stopped.
Internet stop.
I mean, mine is working.
Okay.
What is 1% of GDP? What is India's GDP?
1,877 trillion.
1.4?
0.877 trillion.
Per capita, it's 1,800 USD.
How much is that?
1.877 trillion.
Okay, so 1.877 trillion. So 0.1% is how much?
0.1% of
0.1% of that amount is how much?
10,000.
Yeah.
Divided by 10,000. Take away 4 zeros.
It'd be 170.
I would like you to write down these numbers, because if these numbers change and you need to change anything, then that should be reflected here. So maybe you could write this down. So here's what we heard from this panel, right? Maybe write this down in the next page. Just put a page break. Yeah. So the numbers that we are basing this off is India spending 1, healthcare 1%. India spending as percentage of GDP. Healthcare 1%, defense 2.4%, education 3.8%.
Can you repeat those?
Healthcare 1%, defense, just put it on separate bullets. Healthcare 1%, defense 2.4%, education 3.8%. All right. And the consensus of this panel is, just another line. Panel consensus, okay, spend 0.1% of GDP on additional climate resilience. I mean, what needs to be done for an additional budget for climate resilience. I mean, you can wordsmith this later, right?
Yeah.
Would you understand what this is? You can wordsmith this. Okay. Now, India's GDP, according to information here, is what? 1.877 trillion.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the total consensus spending is how much? Say, put 0.1% just so you're sure. At the top.
107.7 million.
So just say India's GDP, next slide, India's GDP is 1.877 trillion. Okay? And this is what? In dollars or rupees? Dollars. So, yes, okay. And then the total amount that's going to be spent per year is 0.1% times 1.877 trillion. Who has the answer?
87.7 million.
Okay, did you get that? Alright, so we have that amount. Okay. This is the amount that you're asking for each year. Just say per year. Okay? For additional climate resilience. Additional climate resilience, not what is already covered. This is the money you're asking for per year. Okay? Alright. Now let's get down to, so we have, let's say, make it 180 million.
I don't think the math is right.
Yeah, that's 1.877 billion.
Yeah, it's like 1.8, so yeah.
Just remove trillion with billion, that's the number.
So it's.
0.1% of GDP is not the right number.
Yeah. No, 1.877 billion. Unless Google lied to me.
So, okay, so 1.87 billion. Okay? So you're asking for 1.87 billion per year for additional stuff in climate resilience. Alright, let's go down to the blue list that you have. This is all the blue list, right? Okay. Now, of these, how would you rank these? Which ones are the first in your list? So how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Like meaning which requires.
Total 7? Huh?
In terms of which requires.
In terms of how much money is needed and in terms of prioritization as well. So how much roughly do you think these things will need? Do you have an idea? Or how much would you spend? 20%, 10%? Or how many millions?
I have no idea.
Okay. All right. So this is something. Huh?
I think research and development is pretty important.
Hmm?
Yeah, research and development
Which
is
one?
pretty important. It should be prioritized.
Number 7. That and
I agree with that.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So allocation, roughly speaking, if the allocation were equal, you have 7 items, right, total. If allocations were equal, how would these allocations look? How many millions would you allocate to each of these? You have 1.8 billion. How much?
268 million each.
268?
Million each.
If
they were distributed equally.
If you were to distribute equally, it would be 260 million each. Let's get off that. Do you think per year R&D would need 260 million each? Is that fair? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say that R&D needs 300 million. Is that fair?
Okay.
Total is 260. Okay, it needs 300 million. What about GMOs?
They don't need as much.
50 minutes.
50 million? Let's put 50 million.
A lot of the research is already there. We just
Okay.
need more testing, I guess.
Research?
The big research is already there, they just need more tests on like long-term effects.
This is for number 7 or number 6? Are you talking about number 7 or number 6?
6 for
6.
GMOs.
Okay, so it's 50 million, this is 300. Commercialization from collectives.
That's important.
Per year, how much do you think?
50 million.
50 million also?
Wait,
Yeah.
that's only more than GMOs.
Like 200 million?
Okay, 200 million. I know this is very tough at this
For
stage.
what? Like Pixar money?
For 5.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, but if this is like commercialized baby.
that's up to you to say. It could be that.
I would say like 100.
100, okay.
Wait, that was,
300.
100.
300.
This covers the
200, let's make it 200.
Say 200.
Let's make it 200. Nuclear, number 3, number 4. Educate doctors.
No, that's not, it's more than that. Number 4 is more about the standardization of care procedures.
But you already had standardization of care procedures somewhere else, didn't you?
No, that, the standardization
Oh,
of
that
care
was the one?
processes was that, the,
Okay,
actually
procedure.
doing it was in the 5% donations from the investment.
Oh, okay. So this is how much?
It doesn't need to be very much. So,
Per year?
yeah, it's to figure out the procedure of how to standardize care.
10 million?
Sure.
Okay, 10 million. I'm just throwing out numbers here, I know, but just getting a rough assessment. 10 million. Nuclear, number 3, how much?
2 billion.
Huh?
2 billion would be fair.
2 billion.
Yeah. All the reactors, the technology, the research.
That's per year, this is per year.
This is per year.
You don't even have that in our budget.
So we'll reallocate everything according to this then, based on whatever we have. But
Just to put things in perspective, looking at guys, just to put things in perspective, things are different for the United States, but in the fiscal year for 2013, the United States spent $5.7 billion on clean energy technologies and $2.4 billion on research and development. So that
yeah, I mean, very different though. Yeah.
relative to India.
All right. So nuclear, you're saying how much?
500 million?
500 million. Is that acceptable as a starting point?
Yes.
500 million. Rural electrification. How much?
A lot.
Okay, a lot. Define. 1 billion. Rural electrification. 300 million, 1 billion is 600 billion good? 600 million. Ireland says 600 million. Ireland says 600 million. Ireland says 600 million.
Yeah. 600
No. 50 million. 50 million. 50 and 600. 300 million. Let's get 300 million. All right.
Is 300 good?
We'll get back to these again. 300 million. Now, number one, interlinking. These three, how much?
500 million. Yeah, we've got about 500 million.
500 million. What is it? 500 million. 500 million. 500 million. All right. Please add these numbers up. All right, we're done. Please add these numbers up. What is the total? Please add these numbers up. What is the total?
How would it cost that?
We're just building the next 26
Coming back to that. We're building multiple dams up. How much? What is the total? What is the total? Adrian, what's the total amount? What's the total? What is the total amount?
I think it's 1.66 billion.
1.66 billion. This is 1.86 billion. 1.86 billion. How much do you have?
20 million, 200 million.
This is 1.86 billion. We have 1.87 billion. Wow, guys, you guys are geniuses. Alright. So as of now, you understand how rough this is. As of now, we'll live with this for this war game. But we will think about this as we move along. Some of these numbers will feed into our second. We're not done yet. We need 5-10 more minutes. 5 to 10 more minutes. I said 6:30. It's not there yet. Okay. So these are numbers we'll deal with. Some of these as we move on, including for the next war game. But this is what we have. Somehow magically these numbers added up. How much do we trust those? Let's keep on thinking about this. This is a spreadsheet I'd like you to, this is a document I'd like you to share with everybody. So let's keep on thinking, debating this one. Alright. The only thing left now is we need one person, one representative from this panel who will speak 2 to 3 minutes with the voice of this entire panel on to keep the GMO guys satisfied. That's Vandana Shiva. To answer some of what she says. The answer is not just for her, the answer is for general public who is listening to her. Okay? So who is that guy? GMO or gal? Who is that guy or gal? GMO. Who was the biggest advocate of GMO? Sydney. Okay, Sydney. So Sydney speaks about GMO. 2 to 3 minutes you will record what she says. Is there anything this panel needs to say to her in addition to what we already discussed? Do you want to quickly say your 2-3 points you'll say about to address these issues?
Sure.
No, I mean just discuss with the panel and let's see if they agree. Just roughly.
Okay. Definitely, we would never do. The main thing we would say is that we would never continue to use crops that we know are for sure hurting people. So we would do as much research as possible into the true long-term health effects of it. A lot of the information out there right now is kind of like pseudoscience of people saying this, it can have this effect or maybe have this effect, or from studies that weren't really conducted in the long term. So there hasn't been anything really official yet to say they're always going to be bad, and possibly with more research we'll be able to make ones that even if one strain does have a harmful effect, we could stop that.
Does the panel agree that this is more or less a consensus view? Yeah. All right. So Lindsay, you'll record 2 to 3 minutes of her just talking about this, but in a more, coherent, actually, you can just write down what you say. This goes in the website. This is what the panel's view is about GMO. Dam. Thurston. Would you like to take the dam issue? Do you want to share with the panel what you say? Remember, this is not just your view, this should be the panel's representative views. Would you like to say what you feel?
Yeah, so what I would like to say is that our primary objective in creating the dam system and linking all the canals is both to mitigate and prevent floods, as well as to connect rural and urban areas with clean water. However, there are concerns with altering ecosystems and potentially destroying ecosystems and plants. So before we actually execute building any dams or systems, we will try to simulate how ecosystems will respond and look for alternative methods of flood prevention in addition. However, we still want to make sure that our final solution involves some component to reserve water for irrigation and also connect rural areas with flowing fresh water.
Does the panel agree? I mean, there will be wordsmithing, but with the content. Disagreements? Okay, none. So 2 to 3 minutes, Lindsay. Nuclear, there are many voices for nuclear. Anybody who want to volunteer? Which means I don't have, all right, Rachel? So would you like to share with the panel what roughly you'll say for those 2 to 3 minutes?
I feel like we had a lot of really great discussions talking about like transparency, both with just like the safety of the equipment that we were going to use, how the waste was going to be treated and dealt with, and then also just like the safety just in general that there is just with using nuclear power and the technology behind it. And then just trying to promote that like public awareness in the media, just to the public.
Everybody agrees? Any disagreement? Okay. So Lindsay, right now after this, for 2 to 3 minutes only, you'll just record these guys, and this is your time to just think a little bit about what you'll say. But the content we all agree on. For everybody else, 7:15, right, Manoj?
7.
Is when we meet in the lobby. 7? What?
7:15.
1:5. Is that okay?
Yeah.
For dinner? 1:5. War game is done.
My name is Rachel Dowley, and I am from the industry sector, and I will be talking about the implementation of nuclear energy as a resource as we head into the future for India. So I wanted to just address some public concerns that there were about the safety of using nuclear power. And just how moving forward we want to have a lot of transparency with what we are going to do. There are a lot of concerns with safety just in terms of the nuclear waste and how we're going to use responsible initiatives and a lot of research over how we're going to manage and how we're going to deal with that nuclear waste. And we also want to help spread just public awareness just for the safety that there are safe facilities for what we are building for our nuclear power plants, and how with that, if there were ever sort of any threat of a nuclear meltdown, that it would be able to be contained, and that there will also be a lot of safety for how things are stored for the nuclear waste. So that there won't be any threats to groundwater or to local communities in any way. And going with this initiative will really help us to be able to just grow economically. And it'll help us to just really be able to take steps further to being more of a developed country as we have we can meet our energy needs, help those that are more outside of the city, and just be able to have better urban planning to be able to work better towards sustainability.
Awesome. So you spent over 6 hours negotiating, listening to presentations, and strategizing. What was the most surprising thing about consensus building today?
It was really interesting to see how quickly or easily either we could offend each other and be at wit's end with each other, but then also at the same time reach compromise, realizing that we really need each other in order to get our own agendas pushed forward. So definitely working together and listening to each other was probably like the most important thing that I think we quickly learned through these board games.
That's perfect. Thanks so much. All right. Recording.
Oh, okay. I'm Sydney. I'm a representative of the agriculture sector, and I'm doing a press release on the use of genetically modified crops, specifically in more temperature and drought-resistant crops. So there's a lot of uncertainty around GMOs and possible health risks that they may cause. However, we believe with enough testing and revised research, we're pretty confident that genetically modified crops can be engineered to be nutritious, sustainable, and healthy for the Indian people.
This panel is very dedicated to conducting thorough research before any new crops will ever be introduced into the field.
Awesome. All right, thanks so much.
It's all geek to me.
Okay, so can you tell me your name and sector and what you'll be talking about?
My name is Thurston. I hail from the water sector, and I'll be talking about the Indus project that we talked about. The Indus project plans to create a series of dams and canals throughout India that will bring water both to urban areas and to rural areas in a way that we hope will allow those areas to have clean, fresh water that they can purify if necessary, but also to help mitigate flooding. Now we realize that this is multiple goals that we have to achieve, so we're hoping that we can do more research and simulation to ensure that the exact plan that we hope to put in place will be put in place in such a way that there is minimal effect on the ecosystem. However, we are aware that whatever we do to change a lot of rivers is going to have an effect on the ecosystem. However, one of our biggest concerns is mitigating and preventing flooding in the cities across India, which are currently poorly equipped to handle flooding. And also because of the climate changing, we're now recognizing that we're going to have more extreme events that are going to cause floods. So we definitely need to be prepared for that. Also, since India is a wet, dry climate type of environment, we also need to have a way to reserve water, and creating a system of dams and canals and reservoirs will allow us to funnel and channel water throughout India, and if we have reservoirs, it will also allow us to reserve that water for when we need it throughout the year when it's not during monsoon season. So those are our primary objectives. There are also other objectives that we have, such as using electricity in more remote areas, or using other forms of hydropower via the canals that we hope to have to get fresh water to more remote regions. But in the end, what we're thinking is that we're going to have to definitely do some more research, look into alternative methods, achieving these goals, be it weirs or having canals a different shape, changing the canals within the city. We're going to have to look into those as well, and we're going to try to simulate the effects, study the effects, and then ultimately complete this project so that all of the cities of India and its people will be both protected from floods and have access to water.
Thank you so much.
All right. Hello, I'm Catherine Moskos, the moderator from the first war game involving climate science. And tonight I'm going to go through the policy initiatives that we came up with and the details regarding those initiatives. The first policy initiative was the Interlinking Rivers project. There was a high level of consensus regarding this project, but with some amendments. The industry sector wanted a creation of recreational areas, the healthcare sector wanted research provisions, and the energy sector wanted implementation of small hydropower capabilities in some divergent channels within those interlinking rivers. The second policy initiative was increasing foreign investment in the health market. This was also reached with a high level of consensus. So amendments to that policy, the healthcare sector called for a 5% optional donation to critical infrastructure improvement. The industry sector wanted increased slum development, and agriculture called for an ease on urbanization. The third initiative was rural electrification to support health education, telemedicine, irrigation, and agriculture. This was reached with a high level of consensus, and the water sector had only one amendment, and that was the implementation of more efficient irrigation techniques. Next, we have nuclear regulations, meaning a 20% reliability on nuclear energy by 2025. This includes annual reactor checks. This was reached with a moderate level of consensus. The water sector called for efficient water usage and treatment. The healthcare sector called for strict waste disposal regulations, also with a positive public relations campaign. And the energy sector wanted to reduce the stigma on nuclear thorium-based energy plants. Next, from the healthcare sector, we had a standardization of medical care, reached with a very, very high level of consensus and no amendments. The next was tax breaks for the hiring of skilled Indian labor. This was reached with a very low level of consensus, unfortunately. An amendment to that was the healthcare industry called for a mandatory 5% donation to the development of critical infrastructure and research. Next, we have a transition to agricultural commercialization from collectives, also with a high level of consensus proposed by the agriculture sector. Some amendments, the water sector wanted to limit or lessen the dependency on groundwater supply, and the energy sector wanted to transition to renewable energy usage in farming. Next, we have the use of GMOs and less chemicals in agriculture. This was reached with a moderate level of consensus. And the healthcare sector, an amendment to that was long-term research study on the health effects of GMOs. Next, we have research and development for a variety of things, including nuclear waste, irrigation, renewable energy, things like storage of renewable energy as well, reached with a very high level of consensus and no amendments. Lastly, we have the implementation of rural roads and crop storage proposed by the agriculture sector, reached with a very high level of consensus. We developed a budget for recommended projects that needed new budgets. We discovered that India's GDP was 1.87 trillion US dollars. After doing some research, we discovered that we would like a 0.1% additional budget on climate resilience. Therefore, total spending would be 1.87 billion per year. The Interlinking Rivers project was then given 500 million, the Rural Electrification Project 300 million, nuclear regulations 500 million, standardization of medical care 10 million, transition to agricultural commercialization from collectives was 200 million, use of GMOs and less chemicals was 50 million, and lastly, research and development was 300 million. These numbers were reached by figuring out the level of necessity and priority in these tasks. Thank you.